Up next is our legislative chairman, Rod Miller. He will introduce our next guest.
Good evening, Patriots. Yes, I am to introduce a surprise guest tonight. We didn't have him on our flyer, but we thought it best we did because there's no guarantee we'd have enough room for the crowd if they knew he was going to be here. You're in for a treat, of course. Frank and I go back many years, always kidding each other. I've noticed being in the Navy and in the Marines, he always looked at me as we were the delivery system for the real soldiers, so we get used to that. Anyway, Frank is a retired Marine colonel. He thought he was retired. They called him back because they didn't figure we were going to win in Iraq without him, so he had to pack these bags and go back at it. He come back, and he has a successful business, is mostly dealing with the Chapter 11 type companies that need somebody to straighten them out financially. By the time he was 65, he realized that there's bigger fish to fry than just businesses because Harrisburg has the same problem. And he decided he'd become a 65-year-old rookie legislator. There are not many of those around. But his goal was to see if we can straighten out the finances in Harrisburg, and there are many. And I'm counting on Frank to bail us out. He's certainly not, or I could say he did take the job actually for the money. Not his money, our money. And it's his goal to see if we can't straighten things out there. You know, we have the most expensive government, legislature, Senate, full-time in the nation. And on top of that, they get the most lucrative pension system anyone could dream of, and based on Article 2, Section 8 of the Constitution, they're not entitled to it. Frank is one of those fellows that doesn't take it. He gets it. Guys like Mike Fulmer, these folks, and it's growing. I think we're up at 22, and Frank would know that. But anyway, I'm hoping that Frank can educate a few of you that I've not heard Frank before, but if you heard him before, you're going to hear something new, I'm sure, again. So there's my dear friend, Frank Ryan.
Will I screw you up if I walk around in front? I'll keep using the microphone because when you get to be my age, my hearing aid, that's the only way I'll be able to know what I'm actually saying. You know, Rod and I do go a long way back, and when he didn't tell you, it was in the Barbary Coast in 1816. This was actually my hat. Rod was in the front rowing. He actually did a pretty good job. And how many of you are Navy veterans? Okay, well, I'm not insulting you, just aim this one at Rod. Do you mind for a second? The first Uber was U.S. Navy. You'd call up and they'd call a ship for you, that's what it was. But they made us go on the amphibious ships. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for letting me be here. I really appreciate this. As Rod said, I'm Frank Ryan, and we had a great time yesterday with Sam and Linda, and it was actually 2 nights ago. And what we did is we got together and we started talking about what's going on in Harrisburg. As Rod said, I'm a freshman. I'm the first 65-year-old that actually had a kegger because I'm a freshman. So I thought, what are you going to do to me? I mean, you can't, heck, I'm 65, you're going to shave my head and send me back to Thailand and Vietnam? Probably not. But I mentioned this because I ran for office because the Commonwealth is in extremely serious financial condition. We are as close to being insolvent as you can possibly imagine. And Phil, I heard you say that you were out of the steel industry, and I used to work at Luke and Steel. And so I know what you're talking about. And we also, like Dana Corporation was here, Bethlehem Steel was here, General Battery was here in Hamburg, and the list goes on. Pennsylvania Railroad, Reading Railroad. When you look at all these different companies that are going bankrupt, we've seen what happens when problems don't get attended to. So let me tell you this, I've been doing bankruptcy for, I probably ought to say, I don't do bankruptcy. I actually help people avoid bankruptcy. Out of 253 clients, we've kept 250 of them out of bankruptcy. I don't believe in it, all right? And I don't believe in it because too many people get hurt, is the reason I don't believe in it. So what happened was, I said, you know what, I was going to move out of the Commonwealth. I said to my wife, look, you've got longevity in your family, we don't in mine. My brother Bob and Ed and I are the first family members who lived older than, male family members who lived older than 35. So by the way, when we all hit 35, when my dad died when he was 35, my brother called me up on the exact day that would have been my dad's date of death when I hit that same age, and he said, how are you feeling? And I said, I didn't know he did the same thing. I said, what are you talking about? He said, today's the day that if you make it through, you're okay, right? But your wife called me and said, if you don't change your attitude, you won't. So apparently there's some truth to that. But I wanted to tell you what happened is that I went into this area of trying to keep companies out of bankruptcy because so many workers got hurt. And after a whole career of this, we were going to move out of the state because I said to my wife, I said, I just can't afford the property taxes if you live 25 years more than me. We haven't been able, I mean, we've saved well. God has been, he's blessed my life in ways that you can't conceivably imagine. I didn't deserve it, but he did. And so what happened was I said, I'm worried about, am I going to be able to care for you after I'm gone? And I obviously had faith that Christ would provide and take care of my wife, our kids would do that as well. But I wanted that peace of mind, maybe it was selfish or whatever, that she would be taken care of. And I started looking at my neighbors and we started talking about it. And a lot of my neighbors and Rod and I have talked about it for a long, long time. And we just said, look how many people are getting really hurt by this property tax things. I've seen seniors losing their homes over it. 10,000 homes are lost to property tax foreclosure annually. So I went ahead and I decided to run for office, and I do need to explain something. My expertise in my last 10 years of the Marine Corps was economic warfare. I was a Central Command Special Operations Officer in Operation Enduring Freedom. I was in Afghanistan. I was one of the first retirees to get called out of retirement to get called to go to Iraq. So I served the tour of duty in Iraq, the multinational force Iraq, and I was responsible for partially getting the elections done on January 30th, 2005, as well as to help to rebuild the Iraqi oil pipeline. I only found that after I got back. The reason I got called up is because my wife put them up to it, but that's entirely another matter. And if my wife is watching this at all, I'm only kidding. Rod told me to say that. So what happens is that, and I want to tell you this from the bottom of my heart, we are within 2 to 4 years in Pennsylvania from being beyond a solution that is so politically unacceptable to all of us that the Commonwealth will not survive. Now, you're going to have people tell you that a Commonwealth and a state cannot go bankrupt, and that is a lie. So you're going to say, well, prove it to me, Frank. Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth applied for and received prior to the hurricane under a bill called Promesas, approved by the Senate and signed by the President. It was approved by the House as well, but it has to be originated in the Senate. And it's a 3-panel judge, and it was going to handle the bankruptcy. So a state can't just go in and apply to Chapter 9. And what happened was, this rumor was going around that you can't do it. So they filed a bill saying they were going to do this rescue plan, and it was ruled to be unconstitutional. But the Supreme Court at that time, in a 7-2 decision, made a smart move. They said, if you write the law this way, it will be constitutional. And that's the provision under which you can file bankruptcy. So let me tell you the sequence and the orders in which the states are going to go bankrupt. Illinois, California, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. It's going to be one of those 4, most likely Illinois first. Why do I say this? The minute the first one goes bankrupt, everyone will get real. So let me tell you this, if we don't start to fix this, you're being lied to. By the way, in case you didn't, it just didn't come up, I am also a CPA. And so what happens is that if people aren't aware of what's going on, you'll find that your property taxes will keep going up and up and up and up and up and up. It'll exceed the increase in your Social Security income, and then all of a sudden that you will find yourself in a position where you can't afford the property taxes, and then you'll end up losing your home, and then you end up with any one way, shape, or form, different types of alternatives. And people will say, that can't happen. Come to my office, and I can show you the 475 cases last month. These are people's lives that are taking place. We've got to address this issue now. If we don't, here's what will happen. The solutions will become progressively more difficult. So you've probably heard the term that we've got $71 billion of unfunded pension plan liabilities. It used to be stated at $76 billion. Due to the Trump economy, we gained $5 billion. Our liabilities dropped by $5 billion because of that. Unfortunately, that $71 billion is not properly stated, and the real liability is $110 billion. Because they can play games with the numbers. It's called an actuarial earnings rate. And right about that time is when I see people with the deer in the headlights there, right? My wife said to me, she said, I love you so much, Frank. And I think that means she thinks I'm a loser. But I've heard that because they're talking about actuarial earnings rates. See, what happens is these are things that most people don't care about. And so what happens is that it's about 110 billion, and there's a great YouTube video on that we had some actuaries come on and explain it. They did a phenomenal job. And then guess what happened on June 30th of this year? Municipalities and states were required to also report, for the first time ever, their unfunded health care costs, which cost the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania $20 billion in 1 year. Now, a couple things I want you to be aware of. I've been there about 19, 20 months now, and the system in Harrisburg is unbelievably broken. We just had a budget that was passed, and the budget just got passed overwhelmingly. I was one of 9 people who voted against it. Now, I do want to say something. I'm unbelievably proud of what the leadership in the House did, Mike Turzai, and the leadership in the Senate did, Joe Scarnati and Jake Corman. They turned the ship around, and I told Mike said to me, why are you voting against this? There's a lot of stuff that you wanted that we put in. An expansion of the educational tax credit, more funding for some education, some fiscal controls. And here's what I said, Joe. I will never vote for a budget in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania until that budget puts us on a sustainable financial course for the next 20 years. And he said, okay, I'm looking forward to get that vote. So what happens? And I have to tell you what happened is the governor spent $1 billion 2 years ago that he was not authorized to spend. And we have a Pennsylvania Constitution that says you can't do that. Right? But we have a Supreme Court that's not controlled. I'm one of the 10 people that filed to impeach 4 of the Supreme Court judges. It is my responsibility as a legislator, under a constitution that you approved, that said the legislature is the one who should draw the maps. Now, let me make a comment to you. I did not think the original map was a good map. Mike Fulmer, a dear friend of mine, voted against it. I was not in the legislature at the time. So I do think it was poorly done, and we should not be. We need to have a more independent commission. But the way the bills are, that you've heard about all these things going in, and they're great bills, let me tell you what would have really happened. It would have said any rural conservative area would be open for excessive competition, and the city areas would be completely protected from any competition because of the clustering effect of one party versus another. And let me tell you what that really means. It means in about 10 years, every committee chair will be from the city of Philadelphia, the city of Pittsburgh, Erie, possibly even someone from Reading, and no one else would have a chance. And so when you really appreciate what's really going on in the system, you want to see what those issues are. The other thing, the governor, and I will tell you this sincerely, and if Scott Wagner is not elected governor, the probability of keeping the Commonwealth out of bankruptcy is almost 0. And let me tell you why. The Department of Revenue on December 23rd, 2017, in a little-known revenue bulletin, 2017-02, said that if you're a business, if you buy an asset, you put it into service, you can't depreciate it at all until you sell it. Now, if anybody here is a small business owner, that's fatal. So let me give you an equivalent so this makes sense. When I told my wife that, she said, Frank, you're talking CPA words. What's it really mean? If you've ever bought a car, what happens to the car the day you pull it off the lot? Not according to the state of Pennsylvania. It stays the same value until the day you sell the car. Oh, no, the governor said it does. Oh, it does. So like if you buy your home, you don't ever have to maintain it. It's all worth the same amount of money. You buy a $25,000 car. I drive a lot, if you haven't figured out yet. I had a Volvo that I bought in 2004, and I drove it about 700,000 miles. And actually, I got rid of it because they told me I was going to have to replace the windshield wipers. I'm not going to throw that kind of money into a car at that stage, right? It would increase the value of the car. I would have to pay comprehensive again, and it's not going there. Right? So anyways, I got rid of the car, and I didn't get a lot of money for it. And in fact, the car dealer said, "Don't you feel a little ashamed about turning that in?" And I said, I was actually going to try to give it to my mother-in-law, but that didn't work. He said, so he gave me actually 200. But anyway, what happened is, under the Pennsylvania 2017-02, I would have to keep the book value of that car on the books for the entire time I had it. If you take a look locally as an example, and if you take a look at any of the steel companies, if you take a look at the rail companies, if you put in a furnace or a heat treating facility, and your carpenter technology, and you keep that asset for 60 years, you can never depreciate it, you'll bankrupt every single one of those companies. That's what you'll do. They did that, it took 8 months to get that bill fixed. I had the bill drafted and sent to the Finance Committee on January 11th to fix it, reverse it. It passed in record time. The governor spoke against my bill. The minority leader spoke against my bill, and the minority whip spoke against my bill, and myself and 4 other CPAs got up and spoke, and the bill passed 183-4. It went to the Senate, and it sat for 3 months while it became a negotiating toy. And then someone decided that a senator needed the bill, so they copied the language and put the language in the bill, and it came across, and we passed that. I spoke to get that bill passed, and I'm glad we did. It was a spirited compromise. I wish it had been done better. But my point to you is, unfortunately, the way the system works, people don't always act completely concerned if we're the pawn. And we don't have time for us to be pawns. So I was very thankful that the Senate got the bill back to us, and we got the thing passed. By the way, when I spoke on the bill the second time, it passed unanimously. And it's now, by the way, it's now Act 72, and it's fixed it. I had corporations call me saying, if you don't fix this, thank you for what you're doing, but if you don't fix this, we're not expanding here. One company that I know of in Pittsburgh was getting ready to build a facility that would have created about 400 mortgage-paying jobs, I like to call them. They decided to put the property up for sale, and they're moving to Virginia. And we can't tolerate that kind of stuff. So, by the way, I just want to say, as a Marine, I like to have a little bit of a sense of humor, and I like medals. So here's what we've done. We've created 2 medals, and Sam's aware of this, and maybe he'll jump in and tell us what the medals are. The first medal is called the VP medal, Victim of Plagiarism. And Sam, what's the second medal? PP. The PP medal, the Perpetrator of Plagiarism. What do you think? Huh? I want to be the first one who gives into such a PP medal to somebody, because I just think it's neat for a 67-year-old to be going around saying, hey, somebody got a PP medal. And when I mention this, though, because people's lives are dependent upon us doing the right thing. And I can tell you that the Speaker of the House is committed to doing that. Senator Scarnati and Senator Corman are committed to doing that. But we've got to change a lot of our processes. Time is no longer on our side. I was talking to Rod, and Rod is a dear friend. I do like to tease him unmercifully. He's my youngest grandson. We're so proud of him. He never once came to visit me, though, when But what happens that I want you to be aware of it is something that it's really serious. We need to get each and every one of us to get our neighbors to get out and vote. You know, I was in Iraq in 2005, and we had 2 people killed the day before we got hit by a mortar rocket. And the next day, I was one of the few U.S. service members out at the Iraqi poll. And I still remember this day, the Deputy Minister of the Interior, which is a person who's the equivalent of like a Vice Director of the CIA, called me up and he was in tears. He said, my mom today got to vote for the first time in a free election. And they were all told that if they voted, they were going to be executed. And I saw, driving through the streets of Baghdad, 80-year-old women with their hands held high, because they dipped it in the dye, hands held high, tell the insurgents and the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, kill me because I voted. They had a 72% voter participation that day. And I tell you, that's a real testimony. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you right now, in the primary that we just had, 50% of the number of voters turned out as it turned out when Trump ran in the primary in 2016. If that happens going forward, you're going to see a massive upheaval elsewhere. If Donald Trump does not get control and keep control of the Senate and House of Representatives, the game's over. I can't tell you how serious this is. It was important to see Neil Gorsuch, but we have a situation now where this actually, asked Mike Fulmer about this. Senator Fulmer said, a person came into his office and he made the following comment. He said, I'm not worried about this, he said, because we already own the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. And when you got a situation like that, you ought to be extremely careful, because in your lifetime, I'm getting towards the tail end of mine, but in your lifetime, you're all a lot younger than I am, in your lifetime, except Rod, incidentally. Yeah. Rod was born a year after me in 1821. Rod, we're going to put this out on YouTube. The television, Rod, was this thing that we used then. But anyway, I love to tease him, if you don't mind. But what happens, though, is that if we don't get out and vote and get this thing done, you will not see in your lifetime that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court will again be interpreting the Constitution as written. You'll see it interpreted by passing laws as they desire. So let me give you an example. And then, Sam, do I have time for a couple questions? Here's what I want to make a comment to you. And it's something I think you ought to be aware of. There was a really stupid law that was passed last year. And as soon as it was passed, I wrote a bill to reverse it. Right? And I still think it's a dumb idea. But anyway, so they weren't going to run the bill. The governor wanted it. And what it basically did is it created a significant tax burden to small businesses in particular, and individuals. So I was working on trying to get this thing, and I've looked at every finagled way I can get to get this thing done, and I was excited. I think we're making some progress. I took 1 step forward, 6 back, and all that kind of stuff, but we're getting farther away one day and closer the next. So anyway, I got a call from the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs, and they said, hey, by the way, why don't you read the regulations they put out on the website? I said, okay. So I read them. I said, oh, those are okay. The problem I have with it is that's not the bill we passed. Do you want bureaucrats interpreting laws that were passed the way they want them to be? No. And first of all, I don't disagree with it done. And so I said, I'm going to draft a bill that basically says we will adopt those regulations as law. And I'm getting resistance and pushback. You know why? The minute we're asleep at the switch, the minute it's been into effect for a couple of years, you'll start migrating it back to the law that originally came about. And then in about 3 years, you'll be living under one of the worst systems of taxation you've ever seen in your life. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to get property taxes eliminated. We need to restore individual liberty to everyone so that you can retire in peace and tranquility. And what I've said to people is, someone said, what is it you're trying to do? I said, I'm trying to give people peace of mind. Peace of mind that they know that their government is working for them. So let me give you a couple of items. 25 members of the General Assembly are not taking a pension. 2 of us do not take health insurance. Well, I take it back. 3 of us don't take health insurance. And a whole bunch of us don't take per diem. The Constitution might have been interpreted one way by the Supreme Court, but the rest of us can read English just as well as anybody else can. Pay does not mean pay and benefits. So I have to tell you, we need to get you active in it, you need to get your neighbors active in it, because there's some weird stuff going on in this nation and in this Commonwealth, and it's got a couple of years to go. We got about 4 or 5 minutes to go, so I'm willing to entertain any questions you have. One question I had one time was, how could you be so ugly and live this long? So, yeah.
Do you know what the COPPA is, where they're keeping the 2 sets of books?
Well, it's called the CAFR.
That's right.
CAFR. It's a Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and I would encourage you to look at it online. There's actually 4 different sets of books, the way they're allowed to keep them. But under the CAFR, we're trying to, it's a governmental accounting standards board, and the CAFR has been published or come with now for a couple of years, and that's what the real set of financials are. However, the first real CAFR, where you can really see what all your financials really look like, will be out in about 2 years. It's getting closer to being realistic. The change it just made on June 30th of this year will make the CAFR, again, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, a lot more realistic, but it's still not there. This one change that just took place took us from $13 billion in equity in the Commonwealth, right, to a negative $13 billion. You want to hear another negative $7 billion. Want to hear another interesting thing? Representative Seth Grove, who's a brilliant state representative, called me up there and he said, hey, I need you to look at this from a CPA perspective. And we found out, unbeknownst to anyone, that there are still appropriation authorizations for $106 billion outstanding that have never been closed out in the Commonwealth. Let me say that again, $106 billion. So someone left office and decided that they wanted to build an entire stadium in Philadelphia again. That could happen and be paid for by taxpayers. So we're working to try and close those loopholes. That's fine. And we have somebody back here with a question. I'll come up here if that's okay. Yes, sir.
My question is about pensions and amending the Constitution. If you ask any legislature, they'll tell you that they'll never be amended or pensions eliminated because that's passed through 2 consecutive legislatures. But if you read further to the next paragraph, it says if there's a state of emergency, the PA Constitution can be amended immediately. So why isn't a bill, or why isn't this being done? It can be done immediately.
Yeah, let me just, and say, by the way, there was a gentleman up front here that had a question as well, and then we've got a woman up front here, if that's okay. Let me just answer that one very quickly. First of all, you don't ever want to go there about an emergency amendment to a constitution. Because while that might work well for you in one event, it'll be a disaster in another. Myself and about 15 other reps are doing an entire constitutional convention that's limited to Articles 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is the legislature, the executive branch, and judiciary only, which will address those issues, and I would recommend you to do it that way. You start doing things, let me give you an example. An emergency declaration of a heroin epidemic could cost you your Second Amendment rights. So just be real careful. I really encourage you, be extraordinarily careful about giving anybody in the executive branch, legislative branch, or judicial branch the emergency authority. When I ran for Congress in 2004, and I was obviously defeated, because that's why I'm still here. But I ran again in 2010. I lost just by a few votes, and that means I still lost. It's amazing how that works. But I would tell you that I said that the Patriot Act is one of the most dangerous impacts on our freedoms imaginable, and we're paying the price for that today with the CIA, FBI, and an out-of-control Department of Justice. I would encourage you to be very careful about that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
We were talking about individual liberty and the important, when you could talk about that in relation to smart meters.
There's a whole bunch of issues about the smart meters, and I've just started getting into it. At first, I'm going to be candid with you, I want to be real honest, I didn't think it was as serious of an issue as it could be, but it's all about this idea of data collection. The smart meter itself is designed, and I'm going to tell you what the stated comment is about the smart meter. The smart meter is designed to be able to allow them to just ride by and decide what's up and what's not, and for billing purposes. And if you've had a storm, like there was a lot of storm damage this past winter, they can tell almost the second it goes out whether or not that your property was out. Unfortunately, what happens, and I would tell you this is not just an issue with that, it's an issue with your cell phone, it's an issue about the fact that they can tell where you were all the time. This idea of this right of privacy. An unbelievable amount of data is being collected on you while this is happening. So more and more of us are talking about this idea of the right of privacy. So if I could ask you a favor, if this young lady's been patient, if I could come back to you, and in light of the time factor, we might need to talk privately. Is that okay with you? Thanks. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. What I was concerned about is the anti-gun legislative bills that came out of the judiciary. I know that there was approximately 66 submitted, but I think the Judiciary Committee allowed 7 out. And when I talked to, I better not say his name. Anyway, when I talked to one of the guys on the judiciary, I said, first of all, why did you allow them in the judiciary? Because from the outset, they were unconstitutional. So why would you even allow them into the judiciary? And then this, and of course his question was, we had to. That was about it. And then the second one was, and how come you let those 7 bills out? Why did you vote them out to the floor? And he said, we had to appease the Democrats. So my question is, what the hell are you guys doing up there? All right, because those bills should have never friggin' gotten out of that judiciary.
I'm not sure exactly where she stands on the issue. Now, let me say this clearly. I spent an entire life defending the Constitution of the United States of America. And the Second Amendment in the U.S. Constitution is real clear. The right to bear arms should not be infringed. The one in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Constitution is even more clear. It says no bill can be entered which even remotely infringes upon your constitutional right to carry a weapon. We can't even discuss it. So that's a very valid question. What's happened, and my background in the military towards the tail end was counterinsurgency. If I wanted to cause you an ability to lose your rights, I would start doing things like happened in Las Vegas, Parkland, Columbine, other things. And it's a sad commentary because the knee-jerk reaction won't solve the problem at all. Anybody who thinks that confiscating your weapons, come with me one time, because I've been in 7 nations that we've had to invade. Right? And come with me and talk to me about what it was like when the Romanians overthrew their dictator who executed a number of their people because they didn't have a right to bear arms. I get that. But the thing that bothers me more than anything else on this issue about right to bear arms, this perception that I can deny you due process and take your weapons and your rights away from you because I don't like what you've done. And I think that's the greatest threat to our personal liberties that goes right in line with the Second Amendment rights. I believe that the right to bear arms is what makes this nation free and protects our constitutional liberties that keep us free. I will just say one last comment that I'll make about that concerns me. I am much more afraid of Harrisburg and Washington, D.C. than I am of any of you. Because when I see how some of these laws are getting passed, I thank God that we have somebody like a Mike Turzai or Jake Coleman that are saying, wait a minute, think about this for a second. And they take an unbelievable amount of garbage to try to hold stuff up. And when they're trying to do the right thing. Because a bad law, once passed, is extremely difficult to change. So let me answer your question. People were battling the pressure because they felt this, it made it feel better. I said to one youngster, I was at a town hall meeting, I said, do you think this will actually save anybody's lives? No, but I will feel better. I said, okay, my goal in life is not to make you feel better. I do want you to feel better. But I want you to feel better because things are safer for you, not because I've done something that makes you feel better, but you're even in more of a precarious position than you were before. So we need to really solve the problem. Mental health is one. The bullying that I've seen, one person made a comment, he said, no, bullying in schools is not a problem anymore, we've got it under control. And so on that, I pulled up some of the Instagram and Snapchat, because if it's on Facebook, we're bullying each other, that's for seniors. But if you go in there and you watch what they're doing on Reddit and other things like that, they're abusive as all daylight to one another. And one young gal made a comment to me, she said, Frank, when you were a kid, when you were bullied at school at 3 o'clock, it was over. When you're a youngster today, the bullying's nonstop. So let's talk about addressing those kinds of issues. And what I said about restricting, I don't know if you saw this, Apple and some others said about restricting how long you could use a cell phone during the course of the day. Kids went apoplectic. So let me make sure I understand this. You can take my weapon, and I didn't do anything, but I can't take your cell phone. And I'm not advocating that, because I don't know if that's the solution either. But I think the one thing that does work for sure is, let's say it's a parental responsibility. Let's train someone how to use a weapon. I mean, I remember taking weapons to school and to go hunting afterwards, after Thanksgiving holidays. And they were, I have to tell you, I know we got to get going. Well, one very quick story. When I was in Iraq, we were in an up-armored vehicle, and one of the people who was in the military, but didn't use a weapon often, and we were going through an area, it was called a kill zone, which, as you can imagine, was not a good thing. And so we were going through it, and the person pulled out their pistol and chambered a round. So she said, sir, get that weapon out of the person's hands. So I said, give me your weapon. She said, sir, I've got it under control in case of attack. I said, you're inside. What would happen if you fire a round inside an upper armored weapon? It ricochets. And you can get one round to get all of us, right? And I bring this up because this was somebody who was in the military who hadn't been using a weapon for a long time. Instead of making everybody afraid of these things, we should show people how you can protect and defend yourself. And so as you look at different states and some municipalities' budget cuts back, police presence is going to be less and less and less and less. Response time could be 25, 30 minutes. I don't know a lot of criminals that are willing to wait around and say, okay, I know you called 911. I got a couple hours to go. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys have been great. If you have any other questions, and sir, I know you do, I'll be happy to talk about it inside.